Well, I made some more headway on this wagon undercarriage this week. Last week we worked on the rear bolster. This week I'm going to complete the front bolster. Now most wagons have a fifth wheel. Well, that fifth wheel is literally the fifth wheel. These all have four wheels that they run on, but the front axle spins on another pivot point referred to as the fifth wheel. Now this brings up an interesting point, as you are probably well aware, that we are in the process of trying to translate all of my videos into multiple languages. Well, we are not bilingual or multilingual in our abilities to do that, so we are relying upon Google Translate. And many of you have made comments that sometimes it is fairly accurate, sometimes it is almost humorous. Well, you know, that is something about the brilliance of the human brain. When you are a native speaker in your own language and something is translated from Google Translate, say for instance, not everything is translated correctly. And that's just the fallacy of relying upon a computer. And we know that, you know that, but you know, when we sometimes get comments from others in your language and we translate through Google Translate, we realize that you are not a native speaker to the English language and vice versa. So we kind of chuckle, and I hope you do too, in this process that, yeah, everything is not perfect, but our desire is to communicate a little better perhaps than what we have so that you can understand a little more clearly what we're doing. One of these cases is in the term chuck wagon. Well, chuck is kind of one of those terms that, you know, makes us wonder, is it somebody's name? Is it up chuck, as if you would vomit? Or out here in the West, chuck is sometimes referred to as a meal. Well, a chuck wagon could be called a dinner wagon or a meal wagon. Sometimes it's called a roundup wagon. Well, so, you know, just for clarity's sake, the chuck wagon is the wagon that supplies the meals to the working cowboys when they're out on the range following the cattle along the trail. So anyway, we're going to continue on in this fifth wheel repair this week, and I've got a little fixing to do. Sometimes it's one step backwards to make another step forward, and that's the case this week. Well, last week I rebuilt the bolster stake irons that were pretty rotted out. Well, I built all four of them the same, putting these extended threaded ends on the bottom of these bolster stake irons. Well, it was correct for the rear bolster, but it was not correct for the front bolster. And it wasn't until I went to put the fifth wheel plate onto the front bolster that I realized my mistake. Now, if I had taken the time to look at the front bolster, I would have noticed this from the beginning, but I didn't. I made an assumption, and assumptions are not always safe. But it's fixable. So after having gone through all the work to fabricate new ends for these, I actually had to cut them off and just weld flat straps on the bottom of these bolster stake irons. Well, on the top of these bolsters, both front and rear, is a thin metal plate that's used to take up the wear as the body sits on these bolsters. Well, the rear bolster still had that metal plate, but the front one was gone. The rear one is actually a 2.5 inch iron on a 3 inch wide bolster, but I couldn't find another old one that was also 2.5. But I did have one off of a front bolster, off an old bolster, that was a 3-inch that will match also the 3-inch bolster that we're using on this new wagon. But the center hole was pretty hammered out and destroyed from the old original kingpin of whatever wagon it was on in its day. So the question was, do I just replace it with a new piece of iron, which would be probably 1/8 inch thick, or is it possible that I can repair this old top front bolster iron and have an original iron and try to keep as much original, even though it's not original to this wagon, on this old gear? Well, I think I can repair this. It's a pretty big hole, but I'm going to go through a couple options and I think you'll see, I think we can fix this. Well, you can see it was kind of a lot of tinkering around to get this big hole repaired. It has a 1-inch kingpin, and I think this will work. I personally prefer to repair old original irons if at all possible to keep as much original. Like I say, this wasn't original to this wagon, but it is an original Wagon front bolster top iron. So I think it will be acceptable in this case. Anyway, from here we can go and finish the front bolster, and I'll also finish attaching the rear bolster. Well, from the pile of irons that I had on the shop floor here when we first disassembled this whole undercarriage, I have the hubs, the hub bands, and the boxings, and there's a set of irons that goes to the front tongue. Other than that, we have all this ironwork reassembled back on this undercarriage with all new wood. Anyway, appreciate you following along as always. Thanks for watching.